Hey everybody, this is Rykard here again, and welcome to another Pokemon X and Y analysis video. Today's video is going to be all about Goodra, and I have quite a few sets for this Pokemon, so let's get started right away by taking a look at this Pokemon's typing, abilities, and stats. So to start things off, Goodra is a mono dragon type Pokemon introduced in Generation 6, and is often considered to be the pseudo-legendary of Pokemon X and Y due to its fantastic stats and amazing move pool. But as for its abilities, the first one that it gets is known as Sap Sipper, which is an ability that not only gives Goodra an immunity to Grass-type moves, but also gives it a +1 attack boost every single time a Grass-type move is used against Goodra. So this can effectively allow Goodra to boost its attack coming in on a Grass-type move, and potentially do even more damage with many of its physical attacks that it learns. As for its next ability, it is known as Hydration, which is an ability that heals all statuses under the effects of rain. And this is particularly useful for using Goodra on a rain team, as you can easily get rid of any statuses that you may have acquired, and even very easily make use of the move Rest, which will obviously heal you up to full HP, and then immediately get healed at the end of the turn if rain is up, putting you awake and no longer asleep, allowing you to freely then attack at your full health. So this is a very cool ability to use on rain teams. But for its last ability, it is a hidden ability of Goodra's known as Gooey, which is an ability that makes it so that whenever your opponent hits you with a contact move, their speed stat is lowered by 1 stage. Now it is important to keep in mind that this does not work through substitutes, so they actually have to make physical contact with Goodra itself, not a substitute of Goodra, but this can be very useful on a defensive Goodra set, as it can be used to lower your opponent's speed, and thus allow you to switch out into something that can now potentially outspeed whatever opponent just got their speed lowered due to hitting Goodra with the Gooey ability. But as for the stats, Goodra has some pretty amazing defenses with base 90 HP, 70 defense, and 150 special defense, meaning that this Pokemon, if anything, is going to just be incredibly specially bulky. Now its physical defense is a little bit average, being only base 70, but you can easily remedy this as you don't really need many EVs in your special defense for the most part when using Goodra, as its special defense is just so naturally high, and its typing is fantastic for taking special attacks, as dragon types resist a lot of common special attacks that you often run into. So overall, Goodra can be extremely bulky. As for its offenses though, it does have base 100 physical attack, which is fantastic, as well as base 110 special attack, which allows this Pokemon to do significant damage from both the physical and special sides, as well as run mixed sets extremely easily due to the amazing type coverage that it gets. And lastly, it has base 80 speed, which is fairly low on this Pokemon, so it won't be the fastest thing in the world. However, there are a few ways to remedy this through the use of either a Choice Scarf or maybe using a Slack Berry or something like that. But either way, Goodra will or can be a very fast Pokemon as well if you choose to EV it as such, but a combination of all of its stats combined is really what makes Goodra shine on the battlefield. So for the first set in this video, I'm going to be showing off what I believe to be one of the best ways to run a specially offensive Goodra. So we're going to start this set off by giving it a Naive Nature to increase its speed but lower its special defense, or a Timid Nature to increase its speed and lower its physical attack, and this is more or less dependent on the last move slot you go with, as to whether you want to use a physical move to kind of give you a mixed version, or just go fully special with a Timid Nature. But for the ability, we can use either Gooey or Sap Sipper, depending on your preferences. Obviously, Gooey will potentially lower your opponent's speed when you are hit by a contact move, but Sap Sipper gives you an immunity to Grass-type moves, which could just be good in general. But as for the EVs, we're going to put 4 into its attack, 252 into its special attack to max that out, and then 252 EVs into its speed to max that out as well. And for the item, we're either going to be going with the Choice Scarf to increase its speed by 1 stage while locking it into a move, Choice Specs to increase its special attack by 1 stage while locking it into a move, a Life Orb to increase the damage of all of its attacks, but also having a 10% recoil every time you attack your opponent, but having the freedom to use all your moves at your will, just like with an Expert Belt. However, Expert Belt's damage increase only comes on a super effective hit, but that is something very easy to come by because of Goodra's amazing type coverage. But another option you could also run in the last, or as a last item option, would be Weakness Policy because of Goodra's amazing defenses. So you could feasibly take a super effective hit with Weakness Policy and then get the boosted physical attack and special attack and potentially do even more damage to your opponents after the item has activated. But as for the moves, the first one we're going to go with on this set is going to be your main Dragon type stab, which will come in the form of either Draco Meteor or Dragon Pulse. Obviously, Draco Meteor is the stronger option, as it will have greater base power, but also has that -2 special attack reduction every time you go for this move, whereas Dragon Pulse does not have any drawback, but it is a fairly weaker move. So it's really whichever one you feel like going with in that move slot. But then we're going to run Fire Blast for some really great coverage, as well as Sludge Bomb for some really great coverage, specifically against fairy types, as Goodra is actually able to deal with them fairly easily, which is something that's really good for this Pokemon, and also has that 30% chance to potentially poison them. Now you can feasibly also run Sludge Wave here. It's only 5 more base power, but I prefer to run Sludge Bomb because of the greater chance to poison, and only one Pokemon gets bulletproof in the form of Chestnut, and Fire Blast hits that super effectively anyways, so you're not going to be needing Sludge Bomb regardless, so that's just something to keep in mind. Or you're not going to have to worry about Sludge Bomb regardless because you already have Fire Blast. But for your last move slot on this set, you could either go with Earthquake to give you some sort of mixed set, which works especially well when trying to deal with Heatran, as it resists the other 3 moves, but takes this move 4 times super effectively, and will feasibly take it out the majority of the time. But if you want to run a fully special set, I would recommend running Thunderbolt in this last move slot to give you some super effective type coverage against many of the bulky water-type Pokemon that you often run into in the OU tier. But personally, I think Earthquake is a fantastic option for this Pokemon, and you pretty much have a move to deal with every single possible Pokemon that could potentially try and come in and counter Goodra, because of the amazing type coverage you get through Draco Meteor, Fire Blast, Sludge Bomb, and Earthquake. But if you want all special type coverage, as I said before, going with Thunderbolt is the better option to give you some more coverage against water types that would be easily able to potentially take any of your attacks. Up next, I have the way that I would typically run a physical set on Goodra. So we're going to start this one off by giving it a Naive Nature to increase its speed but lower its special defense, and for the ability, we're either going to be choosing between Sap Sipper and Gooey yet again. However, keep in mind that Sap Sipper is particularly useful on this set because of the fact that you can boost your physical attack, and this is a physical attacking set. But for the EVs, we're going to max our physical attack with 252 EVs into that, put 4 into our special attack, and then put 252 EVs into its speed to give it its max speed possible with the Naive Nature. And for the item, again, we have quite a few options, the first of which being a Choice Scarf to increase your speed by 1 stage while locking you into a move, and then a Choice Band to increase your physical attack by 1 stage while locking you into a move, a Life Orb to increase the damage of all of your attacks while giving you the freedom to use all of them at your will because you're not locked into anything, but having a 10% recoil, an Expert Belt to increase the damage of all of your attacks that hit your opponent super effectively, Weakness Policy to increase your physical attack and special attack by 2 stages when you are hit by a move that is super effective against Goodra, or a Lumberry, which is particularly useful on this set because of the first move we are going with, and also because this Pokemon, now being a physical attacker, is more susceptible to being burned, which can cripple it, so a Lumberry is a great way to get rid of that. But for the moves on the set, the first one we are going to be going with is going to be Outrage, which is going to be our main Dragon-type attack on the set. Obviously, as I said, it is meant to work in combination slightly with Lumberry, as this can cure your confusion, which is particularly useful. But keep in mind that Outrage is a little bit less effective this gen because of Fairy types being able to come in on Outrages and then potentially dispatch Goodra after the Outrage has already been locked in with Goodra. So that is something to keep in mind when using this. Unfortunately, Goodra does not learn Dragon Claw, so you can't really go with that as an alternative. But along with Outrage, we are going to be going with Earthquake as our main ground-type attack to potentially deal with Steel types very easily, as Goodra will now have a very strong, super effective move to use against the majority of them. But to also give you some more coverage on this set, there are quite a few options to run with as far as physical attacking moves are. We could go with Iron Tail, which is particularly useful on this Pokemon, as it will give it a very reliable way to deal with many Fairy types, because Iron Tail will be hitting them super effectively. Also, Rock Slide can give you the really awesome ground rock type coverage that you get with between Earthquake and Rock Slide, or Earthquake and Stone Edge on many other Pokemon, which gives you some really fantastic type coverage overall. You could go with Power Whip as a really strong grass type move that is really unusual on this Pokemon because most people don't really know it gets this, and it's kind of strange that it does anyway, but it's a really, really powerful grass type move. Or you could even go with Aqua Tail on this set to give you some more coverage as well. But for the last move slot, we are going to be going with Fire Blast, because this will give you coverage against pretty much every other Steel type that Earthquake will not be able to give you coverage against, specifically Pokemon such as Skarmory, which will easily take your physical attacks, but will not so easily take a Fire Blast. So that is something to keep in mind. Also, there are a ton of Pokemon that are 4 times weak to fire in the OU tier, such as Ferrothorn and Scizor and Forretress and all of them. So that can be a particularly useful move on this set as well, even though it's meant to be a physical attacker, as it will do a great deal of damage to them, regardless of the fact that we are mostly EVing this Pokemon in physical attack. But it does make you almost a complete counter to Ferrothorn in that it can't use any leech seeding shenanigans on you because you have Sap Sipper, and you can easily just go for Fire Blast. So that is something to keep in mind when using this set. Up next, I have a set that is based around Substitute to either get a jump on your opponent with your amazing type coverage or allow Goodra to activate a berry to either boost its special attack or speed. So we're going to start this one off by going with a Naive or Timid nature to increase your speed but lower your special defense in the case of the Naive nature, or boost your speed but lower your physical attack in the case of the Timid nature. And again, we're going to be going with either the Gooey or Sap Sipper ability. But as for the EVs, we're going to put 4 into defense this time, 252 into our special attack to max that out, and then 252 EVs into its speed to give it its max special attack and speed possible. And for the item, we could either go with Leftovers to recover a little bit of HP at the end of every turn, a Slack Berry to boost your speed by 1 stage once you've hit below 25% of your health, or a Papaya Berry to boost your special attack by 1 stage once you hit below 25% of your health. And the main move, as I said, on this set is going to be Substitute, as it will allow Goodra to get the jump on the opponent, as it does have amazing type coverage once a Substitute is up, and your opponent will more than likely have to take a very powerful special attack once you have set up a sub, as they will have to break the sub in order to do any damage to you. So the main move on the set is going to be Dragon Pulse, again, just like on the previous one, or the first one, but we're not going to be running Draco Meteor on this set, as it will be lowering our special attack, and we don't really want that. So Dragon Pulse will be our main special Dragon-type move, and then we will go with a combination of either Flamethrower or Fire Blast on the second move slot, and then either Thunderbolt, Sludge Bomb, or Earthquake on the last move slot. And the reason why I suggest going with Flamethrower on this set in particular is because you potentially might not want Fire Blast to miss at all on this set, because it's a little bit more bulky in the sense that we are running Leftovers, so having a more reliable fire type move could come in handy over just running Fire Blast for the greater damage. But for the last move slot, obviously we can run fully special in Thunderbolt, Sludge Bomb. Sludge Bomb obviously being particularly useful for dealing with fairy types, but Earthquake can also be used again to make you sort of a mixed set that will allow Goodra to do some significant damage to pretty much anything that its other 2 coverage moves in Dragon Pulse and then whatever special fire move you go for cannot do. So it's really whichever one you want to go with in this last move slot, but overall this is a really great way to allow Goodra to become a lot faster in battle and have the freedom to use its moves through the Select Berry, or become more powerful through the Papaya Berry and have the freedom to switch up its attacks. Now there is an alternative way to run this set, so we're going to switch over to that right now, and this is just a bulkier version. So what we're going to do is actually switch up the nature to either be Rash, which will be increasing our special attack and lowering our special defense, or Modest to increase our special attack and lower our physical attack. And then for the EVs, we're going to change them up slightly. We're actually going to run max HP in this variant of the same set, as well as max special attack, which will allow Goodra to just be a little bit more bulkier and have the freedom to use all of its moves through the use of Substitute after it's set that up, and potentially harass opponents from behind the sub. So overall, there are 2 possible ways to run this, one more offensive, one more defensive, and it's really whichever one fits your playstyle and your team that you should run with. But to continue along with this idea of using Goodra for its amazing type coverage, we're going to start this set off by giving it a bold nature to increase its defense but lower its physical attack, and for the ability, we're going to be going with Gooey or Sap Sipper. As for the EVs, we're going to put 252 into its HP to max that out, and 252 EVs into its physical defense to max that out as well, with the remaining 4 EVs into its speed. And for the item, we're going to be running an Assault Vest on this Goodra to boost its special defense to unheard of levels and allow this Pokemon to take hits extremely well from both the physical and special side due to our EV investment into its physical defense. But for the moves on the set, we are going to be running the same coverage as the first set in this video, with a combination of Dragon Pulse, Fire Blast, Sludge Bomb, and then either Earthquake or Thunderbolt in your last move slot, which will essentially allow Goodra to have an amazing way of dealing with a ton of different threats and tank attacks extremely easily because of the Assault Vest item. Now I am aware we are lowering its physical defense with the bold nature, or physical attack with the bold nature, so we are kind of making Earthquake slightly weaker, but because of your amazing bulk, it's not going to really matter that much, and honestly, Goodra just matches up extremely well against a Pokemon like Heatran regardless, so Earthquake is just an easy move to go for either way, even if it's not as powerful as it would be on, say, the first set of this video, where we were running either a naive or timid nature. So overall, this set is just another way to use Goodra for its amazing type coverage, but a way in such that it will be able to take physical and special attacks extremely easily. Also, because we don't have any recovery on this set, it may be a good idea if you are using this particular Goodra to run it in combination with another Pokemon using Wish to allow Goodra to keep its HP up throughout battle, as it is able to take attacks extremely well from many different opponents your opponent might be using. Up next, I have a set dedicated to toxic stalling for Goodra. So we're going to start this one off by giving Goodra either a calm nature to increase your special defense and lower your physical attack, or a careful nature to increase your special defense and lower your special attack, and this nature should obviously reflect whatever type coverage move you go with on this set, as it can either be a special move or a physical move. And for the ability, we're going to be choosing between Gooey and Sap Sipper yet again. As to the EVs, we're going to max our HP with 252 into that, 4 into our defense, and then max our special defense with 252 EVs into that, and also run the item leftovers to allow Goodra to recover a little bit of HP at the end of every turn. But for the moves, the first one we're going to be going with on this set is going to be Acid Armor, which will allow Goodra to boost its physical defense by 2 stages every single time it goes for this move. And this move can allow Goodra to then become incredibly physically bulky, along with the amazing special bulk we are running on this Pokemon, since we are running max special defense. And once we have sufficiently set up with Acid Armor, which is not that difficult to do with this Pokemon, we will be incredibly physically bulky and be able to then Toxic Stall opponents very easily. As you can see right there, one of the moves on the set is Toxic, as I mentioned earlier. So to go in combination with Toxic, we are going to be running one damaging attack on this set, which is going to go either with Dragon Pulse, Flamethrower, or Earthquake. And all of these have their merits, Dragon Pulse obviously being the most consistent damaging attack, as it is stab and will be very powerful, but Flamethrower and Earthquake can be used for Pokemon that will be unable to be toxic, as Flamethrower allows you to damage them, or damage steel types that cannot be toxic, whereas Earthquake allows you to damage steel types and poison types for super effective damage, both of which that cannot be toxic. So it's really whichever one you want to go with here. I know I say that a lot, but there are really a lot of options you can run with here, but just keep in mind that Dragon Pulse is probably the most consistent for damage, and you could probably just use another Pokemon in your team to deal with steel types and also poison types, maybe even a Pokemon like Magnezone with the Magnet Pull ability to trap steel types. But for the last move on this set, we could either go with Substitute or Rest. Substitute obviously will be really great because it will get you behind a protective barrier to shield you from attacks and statuses, and also give you a very easy time to set up, and also be very difficult to break once you have set up a bunch of Acid Armor, so that is something to keep in mind. But Rest can also be used to heal up any statuses you may have received, getting you back up to full health, but keep in mind that this does immobilize you for 2 turns, so it can be a little bit risky to use. But either way, this Goodra is meant to solely Toxic Stall opponents and can do this extremely well through the use of its amazing special bulk and the move Acid Armor. Up next, we have my favorite Goodra set, and we're going to start this one off by giving it a bold nature to increase its physical defense and lower its physical attack. And for the ability, we're going to be going with Hydration this time. As for the EVs, we're going to put 208 into its HP, 252 into its physical defense to max that out, and then put the remainder 48 EVs into its speed to make Goodra a little bit faster. And for the item, we're either going to be going with a Damp Rock to extend the turns of Rain Dance from 5 to 8, or Leftovers to recover a little bit of HP at the end of every turn. But the main move on the set is going to be Rain Dance in combination with the Hydration ability, as this is the Rain version of Goodra that I personally think is so fantastic, and something that a Rain team will really want to have on its team because of how bulky this Pokemon is and how easily it can support its team members through setting up Rain. Now after Rain Dance, obviously we're going to be continuing to run our main Dragon type attack for most Goodra sets, which is going to come in the form of Dragon Pulse, but also with this we can extremely easily run Thunder on the set to be used in combination with Rain Dance. And the great thing about this is that not only is Thunder a very powerful move and super effective against a bunch of different types, and will always obviously hit when Rain is up, but it also has a 30% chance to paralyze opponents, which can come in handy especially when your opponent is running plenty of speedy Pokemon, and you might not have as many fast things on your team to deal with them. However, on a Rain team, you could very easily run a Swift Swim user, but Thunder's secondary effect of paralyzing opponents can be very useful, especially on teams with some slower Pokemon. But for the last move on this set, we are going to be running Rest, which is going to work in combination with the Rain you are setting up and the Hydration ability, as after you use Rest, your status will be completely healed if Rain is up at the end of the turn due to the Hydration ability, so it's just a free recover move for this Pokemon to heal off any statuses and get it back up to full health to continue to easily take attacks. And it is very useful to use this Pokemon, in my opinion, in combination with Drizzle Politoed, as not only does Politoed resist the Ice-type moves that you take for super effective damage, but also provides another way to set up Rain to support Goodra, which then can allow it to easily get up another Rest to get up to full HP, or easily make use of Thunder. Now, personally, I think Damp Rock is the superior item on this set, but obviously Leftovers does have its merits as well. But either way, here is the Rain version of Goodra that I think is so much fun to run and a really fantastic set for this Pokemon. And lastly, the 7th and final set for this Pokemon in this video, if you don't count the alternative EV spread I showed you in one of the other sets, is going to be a boosting set for Goodra to run. So we're going to start this one off by giving it a Careful Nature to increase its special defense and lower its special attack, and for the ability, we're going to be going with Sap Sipper. As for the EVs, we're going to put 252 into its HP to max that out, 4 into its defense, and then 252 EVs into its special defense to max that out as well. And for the item, we're going to be going with Leftovers to recover a little bit of HP at the end of every turn. But as for the moves, the first two that we're going to be running on this set is going to be a combination of Substitute and Curse. Substitute, obviously, to get you behind a protective barrier to shield you from attacks and statuses, and also give you a much easier time to set up behind, and Curse being there to boost your physical attack and physical defense by 1 stage every time you go for it, while also having the negative effect of lowering your speed by 1 stage as well. However, that's not too big of an issue on this set, because we are making use of some moves with low priority, as well as not running any speed EVs at all. So with Curses, you will be able to then boost Goodra's physical attack to some pretty high levels, and also keep your substitutes very easily intact after a couple of them, as we are running max special bulk, and we're increasing your physical bulk through Curse. But the main Dragon-type move on this set is going to come in the form of Dragon Tail, because going with Outrage is not that reliable, and because we're going to be slow as dirt anyway, Dragon Tail is a fantastic move to make use of to not only shuffle around opponents, but also deal sufficient damage to them. But to work in combination with Dragon Tail, you can either go with Earthquake or Rock Slide. And the main reason for choosing between these two moves in particular is that Earthquake generally gives you some really fantastic coverage in combination with a Dragon-type move like Dragon Tail, but Rock Slide can also be used as Dragon Tail and Earthquake is completely walled by Togekiss. So that is something to keep in mind. I don't know if these two are going to end up in the same tier as of right now, but they're both very good. So who knows, but Rock Slide can be a very good alternative option to help you deal with the Togekiss, as well as give you some other type coverage as well. But keep in mind that you will struggle a bit with dealing with Steel types if you do only use Rock Slide, so that is something to keep in mind. Obviously, the set can also be very useful on a team that makes use of entry hazards, as it will allow them to rack up damage consistently every single time they are switched in due to Dragon Tail switching them out. So it's kind of a really cool way to run a defensive but boosting to become even more offensive set for Goodra, and Dragon Tail working in combination with Earthquake or Rock Slide will give you some really great coverage to deal with your opponents. But anyways, everybody, that is it for this video. So I want to thank you all for watching. Feel free to follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Rykard3, as well as follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/RetrainerRykard. Also, bookmark the database in the description that will have all of these Goodra sets, as well as all the other sets in the analysis series that can easily be copied and pasted into Pokemon Showdown to help you get an idea of how to use each of these Pokemon. And also, feel free to join the Zat at zat.com/Pokegrounds. But to also plug this again, we are going to be running a Master of them All tournament this weekend on Saturday, December 21st at noon Eastern Standard Time, and I hope you all should come out for that. It will be a mixed region monotype tier tournament, and if you have any idea what that might be or are curious as to what that is, please check out the video right now by clicking the screen. I will annotate this so there will be a little box you can click right now. But keep in mind that it will be streamed on my Twitch stream that I mentioned earlier, and it will take place in the tournament's chat room on Pokemon Showdown. So keep that in mind, and I hope to see you all come out for that. But anyways, everybody, that is it for this video. So as always, take care, goodbye, and I will see you all next time.